As we all know, we carry portable computers in our pockets. We can do anything from rent cars, houses, plan vacations, track weight loss, and a whole host of other things just based on the applications on the phone. And that's exactly what our next guest did. Cody Irby, owner and founder of GameSTALKR, is going to be in here talking to us about how he went through development, publishing, and now marketing and growing his company. So that's the definition of building something in real time. So stay with us and let's talk to Cody. Let's go build something awesome. All right, hey Cody, thanks for joining us on the show today. Super excited to talk to you about this this app that you've built. So it's called GameSTALKR, right? So can you give me kind of a simple explanation of like what GameSTALKR is? Like, what does it do?
Sure. So it's an AI elevating hunting app. Essentially, what it does is gives hunters a better edge on tracking and predictions and feeder logging and basically all inclusive, right? So from a user standpoint, so you have game cameras that are out there in the field and collecting, photos whenever the animals are seen around your feeders or, wherever you have them. Those photos you can then take and actually upload to the app. We have an AI-powered model on the back end that ages and scores and identifies the animal, and will actually re-identify the animal too the next time. So if you're seeing the same animals over and over, the app is actually going to tell you that it's the same animal, and start tracking it for predictions to help you with your hunting.
So that's awesome. So if I'm a hunter or a wildlife enthusiast or any of those, I can actually set up my game cameras in my area. It'll pull it, and AI will help classify it.
Yep.
And then can I upload photos from a camera and like my natural camera? So I'm sitting in a deer blind or something.
Yep.
I can take a picture of it and do it. And then so next year when I come out and I'm stalking this for years, watching this one buck, I can watch it grow, do its thing, and then see it every time and re-identify it.
Yep. And, on top of that, one of the cooler features of it is the shared hit list. So it gives you the ability to communicate with other people, to create a hit list, right, or a call list, if you will, of deer that you've identified. So say you're on shared land,
Yeah.
how many times have you been out and you hunted your buddy's land, right? And the first conversation you have in the cabin the night before a hunt, right, is you sit there for an hour and you listen to him tell you what deer to shoot and what deer not to shoot, right? And then you get in the stand and you see a deer walk out. And the first thing you got to do is take a picture of it, send it to your buddy. Hopefully it goes through. Hopefully he's watching his phone. He didn't fall asleep in the stand. And ask him, hey, can I take this deer or not, right? And you're losing precious seconds.
Absolutely.
So with the shared hit list, you can create that call list together. You can mark them as ones that you want to call off, ones that you want to, continue to cultivate and let grow. And when you're sitting in the stand and you use the app and you take a picture, it's going to identify it immediately and it's going to tell you if it's part of that shared hit list.
So is that where the idea came from? Like, were you sitting in a deer stand
That's
one morning and
exactly
you're
where
like...
the idea birthed from, right? Is I quite frequently, I don't have land of my own, right? But most of the hunting land that I've been on in my lifetime has been other people's. That's quite common in Texas. It's quite common in a lot of states. And I honestly hate that feeling of having my gun up and ready to fire, or my bow ready, or whatever I'm hunting with, and my phone in the other hand waiting for my buddy to text me back and say, hey, yeah or no, right?
Yeah,
like,
I'm one loud noise away from losing this deer.
Right. I'm one, hiccup, and he's starting to walk off, and it's already early in the morning. I've already been sitting here for 2.5 hours. It's annoying. It builds that buck fever.
Yep.
Right. You start getting the shakes because you're trying to get the answer that you need to take the deer or not take the deer, and it just, it's too much pressure, right? And It shouldn't be that hard. And we have the technology now to be able to make it easier and more fun, and be able to communicate with each other. If you can like my Facebook photo from Europe and I know about it on my watch immediately, why can't we have some sort of a system that helps us identify and properly cull animals at the right time.
Absolutely. Taking technology to the outdoors.
Absolutely.
So it can do other things. We're in Texas, so deer hunting is our number one. We talk a lot about deer, but it does other animals as well, or
Yep, absolutely. It'll do any species of animal actually. And it the AI model on the back end, one of the coolest parts about it, the part that I'm the most proud of with the whole thing is that we actually got a patent on this part. The AI model on the back end is actually learning from your inputs. So every time that it does a prediction on an animal and it gives you the score and the age and the weight and whether it's male or female and does the point calculations and all of that, you have the option to correct it. So if it's a 4-year-old deer and our model comes back and says, hey, we predict this to be a 2-year-old deer. Let's just say it's having a bad day, right? Or it's just not working right for that particular scenario because bad lighting or whatever.
sure, it's
When you
technology, it will fail
technology
sometimes.
fails, right? We know that. So knowing that technology fails, knowing that models are difficult to train and require massive amounts of data, right? That doesn't exist today. We I built the model to take your inputs, your corrections that you make on the predictions, and factor those into the training of it, retraining in flight. So every time you make a correction to the app, so say one of the biggest complaints you hear about any AI model is that it hallucinates, right?
Yeah,
They kind of
yeah,
go south on you real quick. Um, every time that it hallucinates, that's what we'll call it, and says a 2-year-old deer is actually a 4-year-old deer, or vice versa, if you correct that, it learns from it. So the more people that actually use and upload and put more data into the app, the smarter, the better it gets. Does the same thing with new species. So say you're out hunting bear, right? I don't have to go in and pre-program it and pre-train it on bear. Every time a user uploads a bear photo and corrects the model on the predictions, it gets better at identifying and predicting and modeling bear. Same for any animal any species that you upload to it.
that's really cool. So, like, when did this go from like I have this idea in the deer stand to you know what I'm actually doing this? I'm building this thing out. Like,
Yeah.
this is gonna happen. Like, when did that happen? When was that moment?
Um, it was probably last hunting season with my kids. We were well, hunting season before last. I was sitting in the stand. I had all three of my boys that are 3, 6, and 8 in the stand with me. So it's like as noisy as it gets, right? And one of the questions they kept asking whenever we saw animals, how old is that deer? Or didn't we see that one the other day? And I'm texting my buddy as well, trying to keep up with my 3 kids and keep them quiet. And I'm texting with my buddy, asking him about, have you seen this one before? And it hit me that there's no reason I can't make something better that would answer all these questions and I can just focus on hunting and enjoying it with my kids. And at that moment, the second I got back home, it just took over me, and I'm one of those people that if you put a project like that in front of me, I'm just going to do it until it
Let it
works,
consume you.
until it consumes me. My wife is annoyed with me for a couple days, and but once I had this, basic working model where I could send it a photo and it would send me back predictions on the animal, I was done. I was like, okay, this is cool, and I can do a lot with this. If it can identify the same animal over again, if it can predict the age and the score and the weight and everything for me, there's something here. And from that point on, I was just sold on it, and I've been pushing on it ever since.
That's awesome. So, I mean, building an application, like building an app is no easy feat. So, like, had you built apps before? Or did you know how to do this before you did it? Or,
Yeah, my background is in software development when I'm not working on this app. And the hardest part really wasn't the app. The hardest part was the infrastructure behind the app, which I have a lot of experience on back end infrastructure, stuff like that. I have built smaller apps before, but this was obviously a pretty monumental undertaking. Um, it was a good learning experience, and I like learning new technology, so it was fun for me.
Definitely shakes it up a little bit. So when you were building it out, was it like, okay, 2 days and all of a sudden you had a prototype that you could play with, or was it a week or 2 weeks? Like, what's the time frame on the initial build?
Yeah. So from day one, sitting down to actually start writing code for it, building the back end out, building a kind of a wireframe of the app itself, to having a prototype that gave me hope that there was a future to it, was probably about 3 weeks,
Okay.
give or take. And there's
That really doesn't seem like a long time.
it doesn't. Now, when I say that it was a wireframe, it was like the most basic of applications you've ever seen, something you would never release to the public,
Yeah.
and had all kinds of bugs, and
Just a
but
POC to test the theory. It's
POC
could
to
work.
test, hey, can I make this work? Can I take a game camera photo or a photo from my phone, positively identify not only what type of animal it is, but if the animal has been seen before, right, and categorized and logged by somebody before, can I map that? Can I produce data and predictions from that that help me in future hunts? Like once I was able to actually structure all the way that the data needed to be handled, and the way that, and I was able to, the biggest piece, like I said, was the learning capability. Um, there is no database in existence today that I can go train it on how to score a deer. That does not exist unless you're on my app.
I would say it does now.
It does now. It does now. And the animal identification databases that are out there are mainly for birds. And those that do exist, um, just like ChatGPT today, they release a new version all the time,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
It gets smarter over time. The reason they have to do that is because the retraining is very in depth. And once I figured out how to make the retrain happen in flight without interrupting usability of the app, it was just game on, right? Like that is cool because it gives me the ability to turn the app into a community project as well. So like as I said, every time you use the app and you make a correction to it, it gets a little bit smarter. And that means it's better for me.
Sure.
And that means it's better for the other guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So you didn't hire any developers or anything like that. You did all this yourself. So this is like straight up grind. This is like
This is
Jeff
a grind.
Bezos in the garage,
You got it.
just hacking away at it, just trying to build it out.
Absolutely.
So that's really cool. It's, we talk about just that grind and what it takes to build something. And a lot of people that stops entrepreneurs or people with ideas or innovations is just that starting part,
Yep.
just going out and saying, okay, cool, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it right now. Let's go. Which clearly that did not happen in this case. I was designing it in my head on the drive home, definitely takes that factor out of it. So what do you think was harder than expected? And before you answer this, let's preface it with, so not just during the build phase and the design phase and all that, but also moving into the business aspect of it, right? Because at first it's an application you're designing and innovating and building it out. But then once you get that done, now you have the business part of it, right? You have to market it, you have to try to push it out, you have to sell it, you have to get it hosted on, Apple or Google and wherever
Sure.
else you have it. So what do you think to this point is the hardest part that you've had to deal with, the most challenging part you've had to deal with to date?
I would say the most challenging part I've had to deal with today is the not so fun part for me. Um,
This?
no,
No, I'm just
no.
kidding.
I mean, yeah, this is obviously out of the ordinary for me. I'm usually not, a very public facing person. But actually getting the app itself approved through the business models that are Apple and Google Play was extremely challenging. I consider myself a pretty good developer, and I think you would probably agree at this point
Absolutely.
that I've got some technical skills. And that one about sent me over the edge, right? Like I kept getting rejection after rejection after rejection, and
What were they rejecting for? Like what kind of things?
mainly payment stuff.
Like
The
payment gateways and all that?
payment
Or-
gateways, in-app purchases, stuff
Okay.
like that. It's, there are some very, very fine line rules with Apple, and some very, and Google Play tends to mirror most of what Apple does in that regard, as far as their guidelines. Things like, you can't direct a user out to a third party like Stripe or something like that as your primary source of payment. You can, but it has to be a secondary source first. So you still have to set up like an in-app purchase flow. And I'm sure a good part of that is Apple and Google Play want to get paid, right? And
Absolutely. I
and
mean,
why
it's
wouldn't
their
you?
business model.
Exactly. It's their business model. They got to make money off of it. But beyond that, other things, simplistic things that you wouldn't normally think of, subscription management. So if you're a user and you purchase the subscription for it on Google Play, um, do do I as a business owner want you to have the ability to also use it on Apple? And if I'm going to give you that ability, how do I do that? Because it two different payment systems, two different, actual architectures, two different. So there's a lot of back end work that goes into that, into the payment processing and then making some hard business decisions on what you're going to do for your end users. If it was me and I was rich, I would just give it to everybody.
Sure.
I mean that's just what I do. I like building things and I like producing things that people will actually use and changes people's perspective and lives and makes things easier, which is why I built it. But having to stand within those guidelines of the business operations of other companies is always challenging.
Absolutely. So if you have somebody coming up who's developing an app on their own right now, or they're thinking about starting and building it, so that's one of the things they need to watch out for is
Sure.
be prepared to make those tough decisions as you're going through dealing with Apple and Google, because that's where you're going to host it. I mean, it's
Right. Yeah,
that's where we're at. So it's one of those things that they're going to have to pay attention to.
for sure. And there's it's frustrating getting those rejections after rejection after rejection. And then, once you get through it, and you see your app up in the App Store for the first time, it's awesome.
Yeah, how
It's
did
a
you not give up? Like getting rejected so many times, you're just like, screw this, is not worth it.
I there were multiple nights where my wife was talking me down after, I'd be sitting at the dinner table and the phone would go off and I'd have another rejection and it was just, and she knew from that second that, I was going to have to go, work on it at night and go fix it and then try and get it resubmitted and reapproved. And there were multiple phone calls with both Apple and Google Play where I'm on with them for an hour trying to understand their policies because they're not real clear, to somebody who's never been through that process.
Sure.
Um, and as I said, I've built apps before, but it was always either a free app or it was a one-time purchase app. Very simple process. You're not maintaining a subscription. It's not a reoccurring cost. The policies are much more straightforward. You pay your $3 and you have the app forever, and that's the end of our transaction as a business. With subscription, there's a lot more to it. You have to have the ability to cancel it. You have to have the ability to prorate it. You have to have the ability to manage it between platforms. You have to be able to do billing and accounting on the back end for that reoccurring cost, right, and
Yeah.
revenue. So you have the tax stuff at the end of the year. You have to be able to account for whatever percentage Apple is taking off the top. There's a lot of factors to it. How did I not give up? Uh, I It was something that I was just really passionate about.
Yeah.
And I'm also one of those people that, if you keep hitting me with a rejection, I'm just going to keep banging my head against the wall until I finally get it. And I think you've seen that out of me plenty of times before as well. So it's just kind of who I am.
I'm going through a similar situation right now with Big T's and Twilio. I really want to enable SMS ability to be able to communicate with our customers and not rely on email because, of course, it's a lot slower and there's more instantaneous
Sure.
response there. But man, I keep getting rejected, and it is the biggest pain. So I get your frustration when you're sitting at the dinner table, banging your head against the wall, going, "How many times do I have to submit this?"
Right.
And they're not very clear on what it is that, like, you get the rejection. It's not like, "Oh, you're rejected because of this." It's like you're rejected because of this, and now you have to go Google and find out what this
Right.
means because I have no
And it
idea.
changes, right?
Yeah,
Like they give you a policy violation and a rejection, and that's about it. And then
yeah.
you have to go reread the policy to figure out exactly how you violated it. And those policies have evolved over time, right? So you may go Google it, and what you're reading in a bulletin board somewhere is 3 years ago before the policy changed, and it's not even accurate, So
So you're sitting here using AI to score bucks, but yet we have Apple, Google, Twilio, these big companies that absolutely have giant AI engines why can't AI solve that? Like, why can't I walk in? I apply and I have an AI bot that says, well, here's what's wrong. Here's what you need to do. Let me walk you through the process.
I'm
Like,
sure it
help
could.
us.
Yeah, I'm sure it could.
Like, so if
Ultimately,
you're listening,
yeah. Apple,
help
if you're
us out.
listening, help us out, man. I will say this, that even through the rejections, the the actual staffing at Apple and Google were really helpful.
So actually
Um,
getting somebody on the phone
when
or
you
on a
when
chat.
you could get somebody on the phone, like that's a
Okay.
process, right? So like
Sure.
with Apple, you have to do a request, and it's like a 4-day turnaround, and you're biting your fingernails the whole time, waiting to talk to somebody so you get an answer, and you know me, I can't wait that long, so
Yeah.
I'm like trying to fix it and resubmit it at the same time, and
They're banging their head on the wall on the other side.
yeah,
Stop
they're like,
submitting it.
stop fixing it, you're not fixing it, and
You're just going to get rejected again.
right, and but when you do finally get somebody on the phone, they're really helpful. They'll answer the questions. They'll give you straightforward answers, uh, for the most part. But yeah, they were super helpful.
That's awesome. So a minute ago, you had mentioned, you were getting the notification at the dinner table, and then you were going out, and your wife knew you had to go out and work at night. So the whole time you're building this and trying to get this going and grinding at it. So you started a W-2 job during the day. So this was
Absolutely,
the working 9 to 5 and then using the 5 to 9 to really build out what your dream and passion is.
100%. Yeah,
So that's awesome. And that's one of those things that a lot of people don't take into account, is that you don't have to just quit your job and go start today. In fact, I
no,
think Robert Kiyosaki says in one of his books, he talks about if you have a W-2 job, hang on to it as long as you can
for
while you're
sure,
building, and build at night or build on your weekends, and do it that way. That way you have that security to support you while you're building out your business.
absolutely.
Now, again, if you're coming out of college and entrepreneurship is the only thing you want to do, and I'm never going to work for anybody, and you can do that, then rock on. But if you're, in your 40s, wanting to go build an app or start a business, being able to do it with a W-2 at the same time and have that security is a great way to go if you can balance it.
Absolutely. I mean, I
But
gotta
you have
feed
to
my
put in the
kids,
grind.
man. And chasing dreams is all well and good, and chase them. Absolutely chase your dreams. I mean, I've had. I think you've seen me go through two career changes
Yeah,
in the what 15, 20 years we've known each other at this point, and
absolutely.
chase your dreams. I mean, where I met you is absolutely nothing to where we are today.
Absolutely.
Neither one of us are in the same career field,
No.
and both of us are fine and doing well. Don't be afraid to take the jump, but make sure that you're in a secure place to take the jump. You make the decision smart, and sometimes that's going to require extra effort outside of your normal job to go build something that maybe, and I don't know that GameStalker will ultimately pay my bills every week, or every month. I don't know that it will ever be a multi-million dollar company. And honestly, if it is, awesome. I think I'd probably still have my 9 to 5. It's just it's good.
Stay busy.
It's good security, keeps me busy, and when I'm busy, I'm not in trouble. My hands stay out of trouble
Well, you
ultimately.
keep that
So
one going. GameStalker's moving. Who knows what else you innovate and come up with? I mean, you have an
absolutely,
innovative brain. So timeline versus reality. All right. So you come up with this idea and you start building it out, and you're like, okay, cool. So in your head, surely you had a timeline. I know when I get an idea for a project, I mean, as you saw with the podcast, it went from I'm sitting at a conference room table on episode 0 with a whiteboard behind me, and
sure,
episode 1, it was like, oh, I have a podcast studio now. So I
yeah.
go full force, and that's my timeline. I just move. So what was your timeline initially in your head versus what the reality was of how long it took you to go from, point zero to, we said like 3 days for the first iteration, a rough framework, to a first release? Obviously, there's been more releases since the
Oh,
original
sure,
one,
yeah,
sure. So it's iterative, but to the first release to where we're at today.
sure. I was really, really hoping to get the app released at the beginning of the last whitetail season.
Okay.
So last November-ish, somewhere in there. Didn't happen, right? Absolutely didn't happen, and it wasn't anybody's fault but my own. It I had a working model. I kind of thought it was ready. We were still working on patenting, and I did not want to release it at all until the patent was in process. Um, Mainly because I just don't want somebody stealing my intellectual property out there.
Sure. Yeah.
And like I said, the patenting mainly surrounds the training, and that could be very lucrative for different people. Um, so I stalled. I went, hey, this is going to cost me money. It's probably not going to do as well as I want it to until next hunting season, so I'm going to have to wait a full year and carry it. Um, and that was a kind of a gut punch, because uh, infrastructure is not cheap, right?
Yeah.
The back end's not cheap to maintain all of the time. But I tried to look at the positives of it. That hey, that if I don't rush this, it gives me the opportunity to make sure all of the paperwork and business aspects are in line. The patenting is on its way. The and I get the opportunity to test it with some core people.
What did it cost to get this thing off the ground, like from the get go, like from the jump? So you started day zero, and then it's like, okay, cool, I'm gonna go. So obviously the cost mounted as you went, but what did that look like, from point zero to where we're at today?
Question. Um, so it let's just call it let's call it 30K, right? Um, and I say that with hesitation because off the rip, when I first got started, it cost me nothing. I was using open source software. I was using localized databasing types, localized servers, right? Stuff that I had on hand to proof of concept, just like you would with pretty much anything, right? With your business, for instance, I mean, I know a lot of it started at your house, and you did what you could to make it work and see if it was going to work before you started branching out and actually investing in it and getting it going. Um, I did the same thing from a technology perspective. I built the models standalone from anything on the web. I built the app standalone from any of the app stores, and tried it all on a 3-year-old iPhone or something like that that had a cracked screen, and tried to make it work. Once I saw that there was a proof of concept, we started buying the infrastructure for it, which is a reoccurring cost that we have to deal with. And it's a linear increasing reoccurring cost, unfortunately. So the more users, the more data, the more storage, the more cost. It's a projection over time that it's going to increase in cost, and you have to be willing to look at the projections and the bell curve and accept that up to a certain point. So for now, we're in that area where we're accepting it until we get to a certain size and amount.
That makes it hard for your margins too, right? Like to be able to sit there
Extremely.
and do the math on the margins, because you have to have really, really good projections, but you don't even have a base to, if it takes off, say this hunting season kicks up, so September 1st, right? Dove season opens. People are getting ready, they're getting bows out, things are getting moving, and all of a sudden people are watching this podcast or checking out your marketing team stuff, and they're like, man, I gotta have this app. And
Yep.
boom, you get slammed.
Yep.
You can't even project for that because you have no idea what that looks like. So cost wise,
Yeah.
you just hope your margins are good enough to be at least be able to cover the cost.
Yep. So the best you can do is plan ahead. So all of our architecture is scalable. So everything on the back end, we have the ability to increase the power to it, right? Increase the storage, increase the power, increase the ability for it to scale up.
So are you cloud hosting or?
All cloud hosted,
Okay,
yes.
cool.
Everything is cloud based. Nothing is on-prem. I've been through that before. And I want it to be high availability for all the end users. We don't want outages during hunting season. We don't want that type of
Well,
stuff.
yeah, because then you're right back in the same boat, having to text your buddy and be like, "Hey,
Exactly.
you
That's
gotta
just
take this deer."
that's crazy. But scalability is the biggest thing, and I think that's true in any business, not just technology. But make sure that you're building out what you're doing to be scalable, to be bigger or smaller in the future, and you should accept that both may happen. So you may have a big jump in users, as you just defined, right? When we get to hunting season, more than likely, I fully expect that to fall off after hunting season, and it start to scale back down. So the infrastructure we've built, we have the ability to scale it up and down, which changes our margins and our cost projection.
That's smart. Yeah, that's really smart to be able to think about that and project that. And you're absolutely right. As far as like when you're building out any business, being able to now a lot of people don't want to scale their business, but again, you always want to start a business with the end in mind. Like, what are you trying to do? If you're trying to build it to sell it, are you trying to build it and just pass it off to your kids, or you just is it a job for you? but you should always build it to where you have scalability and processes and things like that in place to where it's of more value,
Yep.
right? Because yeah, you go build this framework out and all of a sudden it's hardline framework and you can't scale it back. And now you're eating that cost even when your customers go away for hunting season. And
Sure.
you'll hope to, maintain some that are just avid outdoors
Absolutely.
enthusiasts or, I'm going to use this quote. Hopefully, I don't offend anybody. The bird watchers, right? The people who are going out and they have deer in their yard and they come in every day and they name the deer, their pet deer. Lago Vista, for example,
Hey,
has a ton of deer.
you can name deer in our app.
Oh, see, that's awesome.
So,
Yeah,
and we have users like that. We have users that really aren't avid hunters, but they are. They like the camaraderie and the experience, but they go out there and they don't necessarily actually pull the trigger on anything.
yeah. I have a buddy of mine from the military that they live down in the hill country, and I go to their house all the time, and they have deer that come in every day and just hang out, and
Yeah,
they're beautiful, and they just watch them and enjoy them, and so they're basically pet deer that live in
yeah.
the wild.
You can name them and track them and map them and see all the predictions of when the next time they're going to come up on this app and never pull the trigger on one.
Yeah, see, so that's awesome too. I mean, it's a multi-purpose tool at that point. So there had to have been a point, Cody, that like you were like, this is why am I doing this? Like at
Oh,
some point, you're like, I'm done. I'm gonna wrap this up and quit. And it was probably at 2 o'clock in the morning by yourself in the shop. But what was one of those moments that was like really you're like, man, I just don't know that I want to do this anymore.
yeah. Uh, there were a couple of instances when I was designing the retraining that the part that I patented that I didn't think it was going to work. And it was just failure after failure after failure. And it's probably one of the reasons I missed that first deadline that I set myself. It's because I don't like overhead and I want to avoid it as much as I can. And for me, and with a day job, with three kids, with all of that going on in my life, I have a pretty busy schedule. And overhead for me with relation to this app was having to spend time on it. And when I say time, I mean time in the future, time retraining it every time there's some sort of an issue, feeding it data, developing whole huge big data sets that don't exist. I'd have to go out and actually build them myself, and that's a very time consuming process. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it just needs to be a community effort because we'll get better data. It's going to be better with more people involved than just me to retrain it and then statically hand it over to you to use. When that would fail, that process of retraining in flight without interrupting usability, it just killed me because that's how I knew I wanted it to work, but the ability to do that didn't exist. Making that function was the hardest part, and there were some real low points, like you said, at 2 a.m. where it just wasn't working, everything had crashed, and I just got up and walked away from the desk and went to sleep and, said I'm done.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it kind of goes to show it doesn't really matter what industry it is. Like if you're starting a business or you acquire a business or whatever you're doing, there's gonna be that moment. You're gonna have it no
Absolutely.
matter what. Like I remember one time Ashley and I had started I think it was Celtic screen printing. So it was one of my previous screen printing encounters. And we had started and I was operating out of the garage. Like you said, I started in the garage while I still had a W-2 job. And I sat down and it was probably 5 in the morning. And I remember we were doing this job and it was for the VA. It was for the local VA. And I was super excited to do it. But it was like a 5 color job and I was on a manual printer. And I didn't have, it was one of those outside of my comfort zone jobs. And I remember I was up till 5 in the morning trying to get the registration. I just couldn't do it. And I didn't have the skill set to do it at the time. And I remember sitting down and I had to be at work at like, I think 6 a.m. show up. And I sit down and I just put my head in my hands and I'm leaned up against the garage door. And she sits down next to me and I'm almost in tears because I got to call this customer and tell them that, hey, I'm not going to have your shirts for you and you're going to have to find a last minute vendor. And that like broke me. Like I was like, I'm done. And so it's one of those things that if you're starting a business or you're building a business, like you're not alone if you have those moments where you just break down and you're just like, this is too hard. I can't do this.
You can.
That's the key, right?
You can. Yeah. I mean, don't ever tell yourself you can't do it.
So
Get up.
first of all, it's probably late in the morning, so go to sleep.
Yeah, go to sleep, and then sleep a little bit more, right? Which is hard. I'm one of those people that when something's not working, it keeps me up at night.
Same.
Whether that's technical wise or other. Um, but sleep usually helps. It brings new perspective. It brings new direction. And ask for help. Like I can honestly tell you that I reached out to people who I didn't know for advice on how to approach problems with this app, with this infrastructure, with this backend, and it saved me multiple times.
And that's great advice.
Yeah,
Like in any industry, you would be surprised. And I'm just recently learning this, like how many business owners, in fact, I saw a video on a reel or something on it the other day, but how many business owners will help other business owners? Like you will have a business owner that you met online who will be your biggest champion versus people that you've known for 20 years who look at you like you're crazy. Like even in my industry in the screen printing side of things, I didn't realize that I have local shops around me. Of course, plenty of competition. There's plenty of business for all of us. But I've met a couple of them that are just great. And hey, come to the shop, come tour the shop. Let me show you what we're doing over here. And if I have questions on stuff or I run into a problem, hey, what do you do for this? How do you handle this? Have you ever run into this? And they'll tell me with no problem. And so it's so great to have a community of business owners that just want to help each other succeed. So it's, yeah, just to your point, like reach out and ask for help. I mean, you'd be surprised if somebody called me tomorrow and said, "Hey, I'm trying to start a brand line. I don't even know where to start." I would more than happily sit down with them and help guide them on where to go.
for sure. Yeah. And same goes for me. If somebody reaches out to me and says, "Hey, look, I've got this idea for an app. I don't know how to get started."
Well, I'm
And
glad you said
yeah, I'm
that.
sure. Yeah, everybody's got an app idea, right?
That's right.
Well, and and that brings up a new point, right? Is it that I didn't want this to just be another app. I have, like I said, I have other dreams, other abilities for it that I'm ready to use, and apps are kind of a dime a dozen, right?
Sure.
And the community part is more what I'm focused on. The app is just a way to bring people together, and so are businesses.
Well, yeah, because technically you could take your patented technology at this point, right, and you can put it onto other applications and
Sure.
other formats that could benefit and grow the same way as GameStalkers.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'd love to do that in the future for sure.
So that's cool. So you have a good growth plan going forward. So, and we're going to talk about that here later in this show because I definitely want to get to that because I'm interested to see where your vision is and where it's going. But I do want to talk about like for anybody, we've talked about like a hardship with Apple and Google and dealing with that. Like for anybody that's coming into app building and or trying to develop something or they have an idea for something, like what do you think the biggest mistake you made? Like for me, I mentioned on one of my earlier podcasts that like cash flow was my biggest mistake for me because I came in here, I acquired big T's and quickly realized that I had payroll due on Friday, I had rent due on Friday, and I just put it down a chunk of money on buying the business. But I was like, oh man, I don't have cash coming in because I didn't get the old owner's bank account, right? I just got all the equipment and the furniture and all that. So I'm like, I got to pay payroll on Friday. So I underestimated cash flow and how to make that work. So similarly, like what's a mistake that you made, doing this process?
Yeah. Setting unrealistic deadlines, number one. Make sure your goals are realistic. The I think I would probably say the same is true for me. The cash flow is always key when you're getting into something like this. And I think one thing that I would be cautious of people, especially if you're considering quitting your W-2 job or something, um, make sure that you can float it for a year, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you're building, I don't care what it is, whether it's a t-shirt business, an app, or a bicycle repair shop, be prepared for it not to make money for a year at minimum, right? And I'm not saying that's your goal, right? Go try to make money. Do
Sure.
whatever you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
to try and make it profitable, and I get that. But there's a solid chance that you're just going to have to hold it up for a
Things
little
are
while.
gonna happen.
Things are going to happen, right?
Yeah.
The machines are going to break. Some hosting service is going to charge you twice of what you thought because the storage is bigger than you need or you needed it faster, right?
Yeah.
The bicycle tires are going to start costing more next month because of political stuff going on worldwide.
That's a great point.
AI chips, the memory is going to skyrocket in cost,
If
right?
you can get it.
If you can
I
get
was
it.
talking to a buddy about that the other day. It's a 26-week waiting period just to get memory
It's
right now.
insane, right? And those things are going to happen. And if you don't plan for that going in, if you don't account for that going in, then you're gonna fail for sure. So just have a backup plan, right? Chase your dream, try to make it profitable, but be prepared.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not even just prepared to be able to feed yourself, but to be able to feed yourself and put money into the business to keep it growing and stuff like that. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, if you don't feed it, I mean, it's a child. A
Yeah.
business is a child. If you do not feed it and continue to nurture it, it will fail.
Yep.
And I've been told that by so many of my mentors, and it's always beat into me like, you stop feeding it, you just step away. It's you're going to lose.
Yep.
And I'm not saying you can't ever step away from your business, but at the same time, like, you don't have to be in the business. You can work on the business from further away.
For sure.
We talked about the cash flow side of things, and then the time investment was a big mistake too. So you think about like setting unrealistic expectations on yourself, like that takes a toll on you mentally, right? Like, cause you're like always behind, you're always trying to keep up with your own timeline, and it just beats you down to a point, I imagine, to where you're just like, why am I even doing this anymore?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I make that mistake. I've made that mistake my whole life, to be honest. I'm trying to get better about it. But I quite frequently put constraints on myself, or not constraints. I set goals that are unreachable for myself because I do better when I'm pressurized.
Sure.
Probably an ADHD thing, but we'll not go there, right? But I do better with deadlines looming. I tend to perform better. And but at the same time, I'm setting my own mental health up for failure because yes, it helps me reach that goal, but I usually miss the original goal.
Sure.
I usually am still ahead of other people, right? But it's still over time will beat you down, and just set realistic goals, write them down. That's the other process I really, really had to get into. Obviously, when I went into this, it was kind of like a vibe coding deal, right? Where I'm just like, oh yeah, and then tomorrow I'm going to work on this piece, and then tomorrow I'm going to work on this piece, and what you get, vibe coding is great. People are, it works out really well for certain types of development, and innovation, especially with vibe coding, is awesome, right? Innovation with vibe businessing, right, is awesome because you get these new ideas, you get these new fresh perspectives, you get a new product almost every single time that nobody's ever seen before because you're just passionate about it.
Sure.
But at some point, you have to back up and actually sit down and do write the product documentation for it, and that stuff sucks. At some point, you're going to have to actually sit down and write a user manual. At some point, you're going to have to sit down and do the copywriting on your t-shirts. At
Sure.
some point, you're going to have to sit down and actually put brain power into it. That's not just building the next big thing. And that part's,
so that's something I struggle with.
Oh, me too. I mean, by far, me too. It's
the back end business side of it, right? Because I tend to get an idea and I just run with it and I go full force. Like,
sure.
Being afraid of failure is not something that I ever run into. In fact, I was talking to Jeff Mirabel on episode 1. We were talking about this, and we were discussing like if you knew it was only 400 failures to reach your goal, how fast would you fail?
Oh yeah,
right. Like, cool. There's 10
Give me
today.
10 minutes. Yeah.
I'll knock those out real quick.
Yeah.
And so I'm not afraid to fail, but I run to it, I build it, and I grow it. And then it's like, oh, I have to go back and I have to document this. I have to create SOPs. How does this work without me? You become the sole, the focal point that
linchpin.
The linchpin of it all. So you don't think about the back end business side of it. So you think about sole proprietors out there. So you got a guy who goes out and Joe starts his landscaping company and it's just him. Well, he's got to go out and work all day in the heat in Texas, taking care of people's landscaping. And then at some point he has to come home and he's got to do all the back end paperwork and
do all the billing.
He is the bookkeeper. He is the marketer. He is this, he is that. He doesn't have a team. And that's similar to where you're at now. And I'm slowly, as I build this out, I'm slowly building into where I have other resources to assist me.
Yeah.
But that's why I love what we're doing here on the podcast, because we're not talking from a high level of oh yeah, I've built this business out and it's running great. And it's great. I have 50 people and a personal chef. We're talking about we have W-2 jobs and we have um
Talk about side
we're the
gigs here.
yeah,
I mean,
a side gig that
honestly,
you're turning into a main hustle that you have to be the bookkeeper, that you have to be the marketing person, the salesperson, the customer service person, and the app developer,
and the
and
app
the
developer, and yeah,
exactly. There's
and
so many things.
the guy who shakes hands, and yeah, and the guy that puts out the flyers, and the guy that hands out the business cards, and yeah, and I mean, one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give to somebody who's doing it is invest in tooling early. Bookkeeping software early, billing
Yeah,
record keeping early. You know, start the documentation on what you're building early, so that if you get hit by a bus, something happens. Right? It's not just and
well, and to
blows
your
up.
point, you mentioned start the tooling for bookkeeping early. Absolutely, because I think my books was the biggest crux for me is
Sure.
because it's so quick to get messy
Oh yeah.
and it's such a pain to the word I want to use. It's such a pain to like undo to try to get back on track. And
Yep.
I mean I struggle with it still even now and I have a bookkeeper and all that. We're still digging through our books trying to make sure that it's all jiving the way we need it to for future.
Dealing with it on the way here, man. I mean, I think there was one day during the project, building the actual app, where I immediately began incurring, I think, five different vendor costs in one day. I mean, just right there off the bat from that point forward, I was getting a bill every single month from five different vendors, just flipping the switch to on.
Yep.
And I mean that piles up quick, right?
Absolutely
So,
it
so
does. It's scary to watch how much money goes out real fast that way.
absolutely.
So let's talk about like current state and growth of I'm gonna say of the application, but it's of the business, right? GameStalker is not just an app. GameStalker is a business, so a lot of people will, I think, tend to think of okay, well, it's an app online, but they don't think about the fact that these apps are, especially where it's your only app, right? It is the business at this point. Now, as you get more apps under and stuff, you have a bigger business umbrella
Sure.
and all that. But at this point, GameStalker is the business.
Yep.
And so, like, where is that today? Like, where are you at today with it?
So today it's fully released. It's on the App Store. You can go download it today, right now, from your phone, from my phone, from anybody, anywhere. Works on Google Play and Apple. The the subscription. So we have two different subscription plans. We've got a $10 a month one for the Pro. Got a $5 a month one for the Basic. There's a few different features that don't work in Pro, or don't work in Basic, obviously, from Pro.
Sure.
Um, uh, Not as many as you would think. But there has to be some level of tier difference between the two, mainly because of what it costs me. So with the Pro plan, you generally have the ability to upload more faster. The storage grows quicker. So that, just to offset that cost, really is where the Pro subscription comes in. As far as we're gaining users every month, I can't even tell you how many we have at the moment, but it's continuing to grow steadily. Um, we're haven't done a new release in a month. And the last release we did was just basic bug fixes. Um, Again, we're doing some trade shows and stuff this summer, that we already have planned out, and that are gonna hopefully get the name out there a little bit more. And then we'll really ramp up the marketing stuff, a couple of months before hunting season this year.
Sure. Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense.
See how far we can push that. And again, like you said, it's not just an app. The way that we've built this and the way that we've structured it is not only to engage, community and hunting, to have groups of guys that are actually all actively using the app together, that lets them get through the hunting season easier, make sure nobody's, killing off a prize deer, or,
Sure.
the my deer that I called for that year or anything. But in addition to that, I have, some other innovative ideas that I would like to branch into other areas with. Some of them require some hardware that I don't really want to get into, but it's not just an app. There's other pieces to it coming that that I'm pretty excited about for sure.
That's awesome. So you have a growth plan on the horizon, other ideas. And then do you have like feedback loops and stuff built into it to where as
Absolutely.
it grows with hunting, you can take user feedback and maybe add more features to like the
Yep.
pro version or whatever?
Absolutely. So on the app and on the website, there are both communication portals methods that you can contact support if you have a problem. You can write a review. You can leave a review on the App Store. You can, like I said, leave a review on our website. But you can also there's a in the support portal. There's an idea category, right? So if you have something new that you think would be helpful with it, submit an idea and we'll absolutely evaluate it. And if it
Yeah, see that's awesome. So basically you can do feature requests from the field even. That's what I'm sitting in a
sitting in
deer
your deer
stand. I'm
stand,
like, oh
right?
man, this would be nice if it would do this. Oh, here, I can just message support, which is Cody.
And
But
I'll be honest with you that was one of the good things that came out of the delayed release after hunting season this year is that we were beta testing with users as they were sitting in the stand, and there's a good number of features in that app that came from exactly what you just said, where they're texting me saying, "Man, could the app do this?" And we'd add it. I'll give you an example. So there's a widget inside the app called Rattler, right? Like,
okay.
and when you click on that, you can choose either an antler rattle or a deer feeder. And when you shake your phone, it makes the sound of antlers banging together like you would call in a buck.
Oh, that's
Or
cool.
you choose the deer feeder and it sounds like a feeder
Fear
paying
going
out.
off.
Yeah, so you
That's
just hang it out
cool.
the deer. And I've actually used it and actually had it work. It was I thought, man, this is kind of cheesy. I don't know if it's actually gonna function or the deer are actually gonna take it. But it worked. Like literally, I did that corn rattle outside outside the stand while I was sitting in there and had deer walk in.
So right now, is it just doing it for deer?
Just for deer
So if
right
I
now.
so if I go on the app or the website right now and I put in a feature request for like turkey calls,
Sure,
duck
we'll
calls,
do it. Yeah, all day long. And you just shake your phone and it
I'll be right back.
yeah,
I'm going to do that today because that
yeah,
would be great sitting in a duck blind. Because I
yeah,
hunt deer, but I'm an avid bird hunter, so I'm a huge duck hunter, geese,
yeah,
all of that. So that'd be awesome to be able to just go up there and be able to call in ducks
yeah.
without necessarily having to sit there and call.
Oh, and it's also there's another widget called the trophy room, right? So for duck hunters in particular, we've had a couple of people tell us that they liked that because you can log the ducks that you've taken off that day, take the pictures of them with your kids or whatever. You can put in the caliber, you can put in the location, you can put in the time, the day, and it most of that information it actually pulls down automatically. Based on your location of where you're at, the time of day that's on the phone. Obviously you have to put in the caliber of weapon and stuff. You
Sure,
can add little notes, hey, I was with my kid at this location, but you
that's
can
cool.
also, geo point it. And so that the next time you're out there, if you're in a big wetland area and you can't remember what particular marsh you were drowning in that day, you can, get back to that spot. It produces heat maps as well. So if you're hunting a big, piece of public land or something like that, you have the ability to mark both the kills and just the sightings as public. So um, uh, I hunt in Montana sometimes, right? Montana is mostly public land. So it's not like Texas
Yeah, there's no public
where
land
there's
here.
no public land unless you're down
It's
there by the border and it's
yeah,
all oversaturated. But, in Montana, like you just start walking that way. And, if you feel like sharing that information, you can mark it as public and it doesn't mark the exact spots, but it gives heat mapping, right? You get heat blooms on the map where people have had sightings, and you can help each other, even if you're not in direct cohorts with the person that's hunting next to you.
yeah, that's cool. And I didn't realize that it was it was so developed out as far as like being able to do calls and stuff, but the trophy room and all the different setups that are in there already. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited to play with it a little bit. What does your normal week look like with this? With GameStalker and all of that, because I know you're still, like I said, you're still W-2, so you're still grinding away, to put food on the table while you build out this dream. So, what does your normal week look like?
Yeah, I mean my day job is actually pretty intensive, and I think you know that.
Yeah.
It's pretty time intensive. I work absolutely every day from 8 to sometimes 6 just on my normal job. I have three kids, so I'm always, running somewhere
And
rather
not just
quickly.
three kids that like hang out and play
Yeah,
video
no, they're
games on a
feral.
tablet all
They're
day.
feral.
Like
Yeah,
three kids that are out on the property chasing donkeys and
yeah.
getting into beehives or whatever else they can
Oh,
find trouble to get into.
anything. I mean,
Chasing chickens.
and they're in sports and horseback riding and into tearing stuff up and taking apart anything they can get their hands on. Yeah, they're
Be
feral,
very active kids.
very active kids. Yeah. Uh, but so as far as GameStalker goes, right? Anytime I'm outside of those hours, obviously I don't work on it at work.
Yeah.
And a lot of, and you're aware of this, a lot of what we do at work is very um, public safety oriented. So we tend to focus pretty hard when we're working on that stuff
Sure.
because it's
Absolutely.
really important. But outside of that, for GameStalker, it's continuing keeping up with the billing, answering any support requests that we have come in after hours. I get the notifications immediately. I also have monitoring, right? So we have health monitoring on all the back end and all the front end, so that if something is going wrong, we'll address that immediately. Hasn't happened yet. Knock on
Knock on wood.
knock on wood. Um, uh, Also doing any bug fixes that we have coming up, making sure that anything we've submitted to Apple and Google has actually gone through. That there's nothing we need to correct there. The taxes, we just did the taxes for the business for the first year. We just formed it. We're already doing taxes. That's just part of life. And again, looking into the future. So this past week we were working on getting registered for the trade shows we want to go to this year. Just trying to grow it anywhere and everywhere we can.
It's awesome. And I think we talked about that. We ended up getting into the vision of kind of where it was going, what you're adding to it. Of course, some of it's going to be top secret because it's really cool
Oh
stuff.
no, it's not top secret. I just didn't know how technical you wanted to get, I mean, I'm happy to share it. It,
Don't give away all the secrets though.
oh no, it's not a secret, and it's patented. We're
Patented,
good.
okay.
Yeah. It's patented. It's trademarked. It's all kinds of fun stuff. Lawyers. You asked me earlier about what costs I didn't expect. Lawyers are expensive.
Yes, they are.
Patents are extremely, extremely expensive, and they're not a guarantee. So be prepared for that, right? If you're going to go after a patent on something that you build. But patents are very expensive, very time consuming, lots of paperwork, lots of design documentation, lots of just time. But as far as the future of GameStalker, what what I originally saw uh, as a really great possibility for it is, I've got three game cameras out there right now, sitting on land for different people. Um, I would love to not have to upload photos by myself, right? I would love to have to not, have their app send me a photo, right? And then have to take that photo and upload it to GameStalker. That'd be epic, right? Like where, if there was a global method for all of these different game camera providers that where they had a way to interface where you could simply point it at GameStalker, and instead of having to use their app and then use the other app, and I've got two different types of cameras, right? So I've actually got two different camera apps and GameStalker, right? And so to get around that for now, with the Pro subscription, you have the ability to upload batches. So I can take a whole batch of photos from one app and a whole batch of photos from the other app. I can give them all into GameStalker, and it auto does all the AI stuff and lets you correct it if needed, but otherwise it just accepts it and then starts plotting and predicting and all of that off of it. The future, as I said, what I'd really like is the ability for all of these game camera company providers for their apps to have a way to interface with a single point, right, of collection, so that you could use GameStalker as your feed from however many different cameras you have from however many different types. And I've done a little bit of reaching out to some of the bigger ones and haven't gotten very far with that yet, which is kind of expected. The other option, right, is the one that I don't like as much, which is get into the game camera business, which just sounds horrible. Hardware in general, just as well as I do from your IT experience, that hardware in general is not the game to get into at this particular time in the country,
A lot of
and
supply chain issues.
supply chain issues and inventory issues and upfront capital issue. It's just, you have to develop the hardware and then you have to update the hardware and then you have to support the hardware, and it just sounds awful, right? I think there's better ways we can do it already. I think there's game camera companies out there that today do it better than I ever could, and I respect that. As far as their processing and back end and actually providing useful information from them, I don't think they do that very well. And as far as I've seen, as far as I've heard, as far as I've read, none of them really have any plans to.
So where can people find GameStalker now? Like, where can they download it?
App Store. Jump on the App Store, type in GameStalker.
Okay, so it's on Apple, it's on Google. You got all that cleared up. You got through the process. So you're good there.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a desktop version? I mean, you mentioned a website. Is there a desktop version of it, or do you have like a way to access it via desktop if you wanted to?
So that's coming. It's again, it's a difficult thing, because we get into subscription management again. It's a decision on, giving people that ability based on their phone subscription, and how many abilities do we give them on the desktop version where they can subvert all of that.
Okay.
But it is coming. We're working on it. There will be a browser-based version of it where you'll have, the ability to do all the same things you can do from your app on the phone. We're just still kind of working through how we handle subscription management.
Do you have any, or what advice could you give to somebody that's sitting on an idea right now? Like they have this great idea for an app and they're just kind of sitting on it because they don't know where to go next.
Call me.
I love it.
Call me. Like I said, I think one of the early mistakes I made was not reaching out for help sooner. Now, obviously, protect yourself. And I will say that I did this. Anybody that was part of my project before I had protections in place, before it was a formed business, before it was, patented, before it was, before the lawyers got a hold of it, they absolutely signed, an NDA, right? I mean, I think even you signed one at one point, right? Like,
Yeah.
Just for doing like t-shirts and stuff, right?
Same. My team all has NDAs.
Absolutely. There's easy templates out there. Get an NDA in place before you talk to anybody about a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
And that's anybody, family, friends, right? Like when it comes to business, it's business. And that is a hard thing to follow, hard thing to hold yourself to, but it's business. If you want to make money from your idea, protect yourself. But once you have that in place, ask for help. Keep it generalized. Reach out to, I think you and I are part of that same Dad's Leander Facebook group, right? And, I'm on that thing every single day. I may not always comment, but I definitely comment when there's technical posts and stuff like that come up, or people asking questions. I'll answer them anytime I can. Like I said, the other thing that I would tell people is don't give up, right? Like when you hit something hard, just power through it, or ask for help, or come at it from a different direction with fresh perspective.
Well, that's tough too, because everything we have on social media now, it makes it look like starting a business is so easy. And I talked to somebody yesterday and was like, "Oh, I could post this one clip and I'll get 1 million views," and it doesn't work that way. And so what social media is doing is a lot of times it's tending to take away the grind and show the true facts behind how much it takes to get here.
It is a grind and a half. It
is not for everybody.
It is not for everybody. I'm terrible with social media. Luckily, my beautiful wife absolutely is much better with it than me. But I'm doing other alternative things. Like we've got some interns who are at a school that are doing like a school project, that building videos for us for social media. Simple little things like that. You can reach out and ask around. And like I said, I'm terrible at social media. You're lucky you got me in this room, right? Like, I mean,
well, I appreciate you coming on. It's been really fun to actually learn more about GameStalker and kind of where it stands as a business. Because I mean, truthfully, I hadn't even thought about it. I thought about, oh, it's an app and yada yada yada, and then I was like, well, wait a minute. The app is the business. Like it's all run the same as a business. It's just the product is the application. So that's really cool. So I really appreciate you coming on. With that being said, so of course I've got to give you a GameStalker hat. So we always try to get your guys' logos done. Obviously, I have already done your shirts as you were building out shirts and hats. But, for the sake of the show, I want to make sure I had one on here for you because I would hate for you to be like, well, you didn't give me a hat. And then I've got a 0 hour hat for you because, of course, my brand line 0 hour. Got to pitch that a little bit, and I try to get that out to you guys as much as I can. So again, there's that. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. If you're building something and you enjoy this content, or you're thinking about building something, make sure you stay tuned. Follow us. You can follow us on Spotify. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts. We have our YouTube channel, so you can subscribe there. We're also on Facebook, Instagram. You'll see clips, short clips, and other piece of advice as we go along. So please be sure to follow. And until then, let's go build something awesome.